We thank you for all of your contributions when you were a faculty member and to Bushman's and now to Patrick. But you let your name here and you became the fulcrum for all of the understanding we had today. And now that you're my friend, I can say thank you. About the Mormon Council is so many of you here today, I get to see you about once a month or every 2 or 3 months if I have to be out of town doing things. So it's great to see old friends and it's great to see many, many new faces, and I hope you enjoyed the conference. To conclude the conference, we have another very special person, another person that I call my friend, Claudia Bushman. Just like her husband with whom she shares the name. She and they have added so much to our lives here and our lives in the world as we come to understand more and more about Mormonism and women in the church and everything that it means. So Claudia, we're glad to welcome you back. And I just hope I get the opportunity to welcome you back more and more because we missed you.
Many years ago, I read The Angel and the Beehive, Armand Mauss's path-breaking sociological study of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A story he had conceptualized as the Church's serial magnetic attraction to opposing forces. The Church's needs to remain true to its original mystical, sensational history and the need to adapt to the modern world. When I read that book, I was struck by how clearly his model explicated the church that I had grown up in and what it had come to be. Changes that had made no sense to me, that I certainly regretted, that I felt had been mistakes, that made complete sense in his system. The things that I and others had valued in the church were just throwaways as we moved into the promised globalism of the late 20th century. I did what I had never done before or since. I wrote him a fan letter. Richard and I had always known Armand and Ruth Mauss, but not well. We've always been aware of him moving in the same circles, and I had probably met him long ago when we were much younger, because we come from almost the same world. We are children of Utah's out-migration, whose families settled in Northern California. As the church of the past had attempted to establish Mormon villages in sparsely settled outlands, our little congregations supplied Mormon villages for us in California. Armand and I didn't live in Utah, but we lived very much in Mormonism, where intensive programs involved us heavily in Zion more than half the days of the year. Armand was Utah-born, but his parents left the home state when he was very young as part of the great Mormon diaspora between the two world wars. His family moved to Southern California, where the first stake outside the Deseret Platte was founded, and then moved on to Oakland in the San Francisco Bay Area. My family followed the same trajectory. My father and mother coming as single people in the 20s, meeting and marrying in Los Angeles, and then settling in Oakland, where I was born. They later moved to San Francisco across the bay. But before that, my father was Bishop of Oakland's Diamond Board, an offshoot of the board where Armand's father was bishop. His father, the eldest of 9 children, and my father, the eldest of 10, both left school early to work, no other options being available. Both of our fathers rose above their beginnings and brought family members along with them. Armand and I are not Utahns. We have never been Utahns. We are California Mormons. California Mormons, and I'm speaking of California Mormons of our time, are more independent than Utah Mormons. They are grateful for the distance that separates them from Salt Lake City. They pay less homage to old church families. They are less pious, less judgmental, more aware of living in and negotiating with the secular world. Mormons, being away from our prime Zion, clung together. They provided a nurturing village for the children. California Mormons remain cooler in style, bearing less effusive testimonies. They do not stand to sing "O Ye Mountains High." They try to avoid singing it at all. They are loyal and reliable. They are the real Mormon pioneers, as all California Mormons know. Didn't Sam Brannan, the leader of 200-plus Mormons on the ship Brooklyn, leave New York, sail around the Horn, and then land in Yerba Buena, later San Francisco, doubling the population in 1846, a full year before Brigham Young proclaimed the desolate Utah Valley a place? Had not Brigham Young called the California Mormons home at the time of the Utah War, California's Mormon roots would be more visible. The vestiges are still there. I submit that California Mormons are a distinct and superior subculture. So Armand grew up in a double culture. Church and its liberal activities, the small Mormon community, against the sharp strivings of the Californians, people of every nation, streaming into the Golden State with the hopes of making it big or at least better. Armand saw the opportunities to get ahead that had not been available to his father. He could compare his sharp mind to those of his peers and be confident that he measured up. He went to good schools with people of all stripes in the very shadow of the great University of California, Berkeley, which was blessedly cheap in his day. He could have gone right through those gates, but temporarily leaving secular culture to go on a mission. He said, "I was a religious boy, despite my rebellious tendencies, and I'd been reared in a California Mormon community that had richly nurtured me socially, intellectually, and spiritually. The Oakland ward, where I'd lived for more than the previous decade, had a membership drawn from the working and lower middle classes, with very few members of greater social status. All were hard-working, earnest, and for the most part, religiously devoted. From amongst them had come my most important ecclesiastical leaders, teachers, and youth counselors, all devoted volunteers, of course. I could not and would not let them down." What a perfect picture that is of the Mormon church of the 40s and 50s in California. Noisy and apostates and naysayers, generally invisible in those days. It happened that Armand went to New England states for his mission. One of the young lieutenants of S. Dilworth Young, the old Boy Scout exec who sent his elders out for months at a time, without purse or script. The mission increased Armand's native sharpness to deal with difficulties while also putting his Mormon beliefs, which had been unquestioned, under scrutiny compared to the knowledge of the world. From then on, he was more careful about the beliefs that he proclaimed. Even while he was on his mission, he made his own decisions, as he later said. While still a young adult, I learned to recognize and appreciate the human frailty, the human fallibility in all our leaders, and thus to keep my expectations for their performance quite modest. That attitude has blessed me with a certain immunity against disillusionment, which for many saints has followed their confrontations with the human failings of leaders from the greatest to the least. My loyalty to the church as an institution, therefore, has never depended on my assessments of the teachings or behavior of any particular leaders at either the local or the general level. In his way, he kept his distance both from the church he had grown up in and from the university life he was training to join. It happens I also left California for New England some years later to go to college, and one of Armand's converts from that mission to the New England states, a young man named Lloyd Nobles, commuting into Cambridge from his far distant home in a little town called Hopkinton, sometimes picked me up at school on his way in. So our lives cross and cross. After his mission, instead of enrolling in the University of California, Armand chose adventure and went to Japan, where his father had been named the church's mission president. During his 4.5 years there, from the summer of '49 to the end of '53, he graduated from a Jesuit university, served 2.5 years of a 4-year enlistment in the U.S. Air Force, found a bride, and produced 2.5 children. He describes his meeting with Ruth Eleanor Capital, who was a petite young blonde from southeastern Idaho, also in the Air Force on duty in Tokyo. Conducting a church meeting in 1950, he immediately spotted her, saw her broad, fetching smile, set off by charming dimples. The relationship deepened, and as the country exploded in spring cherry blossoms, they were married. It was 1951. What do we make of this trajectory? Here is a smart young man in a hurry, adventurous, confident, many years of training to go, who's quick on his feet, adjusting circumstances, and yet very much the young LDS man who succumbs to dimples and cherry blossoms. He finds eternal love along with 2.5 children in Japan. Was there any concern about beginning a family when he had so much school ahead? Back to his academic life in 1955, he enrolled as a graduate student at UC Berkeley. He had the GI Bill to help him, but nevertheless he embarked on a ferocious schedule of school and toil to support his growing plan. He worked as a night watchman and a janitor, taught in elementary school, high school, and junior college. He could have stopped at any one of those places, but he carried on. He not only endured, he prevailed. Think of the labors of that life, full-time work against full-time or part-time school. How many people do we know who have washed out of a regime like that, their ambition tempered by the labor? With his MA in hand, he accepted a position in a ward bishopric, planning a rest from his double labors of work and school. That was 1957, when he was 29. Yet after that 5 years of time off from school, when he could have continued as a community college professor, he went back to school to work on his doctorate. During that period, the Mauss family grew to 10 people with 8 children. If this were a different occasion, this tribute would give Ruth the credit she deserves for this successful family. Would a young man today planning an extensive training period toward a doctorate and a modest income as a professor, a young man without a trust fund, have had or chosen to have had 8 children? This large progeny may well have resulted from the outspoken LDS church beliefs at the time. Birth control was not only discouraged for church members, it was illegal to even disseminate birth control information until the 1970s. Roe versus Wade was not decided until 1973. Whatever the reasons, a grand family resulted. It was a heavy load, even for Armand. So back to UC in '62, entirely self-supporting, no big fellowships, no support packages. He found it expedient to change his field to sociology, where he could study part-time. He expected some adjustments moving from history, but not as many as he found. He had troubles with the sociological concept that truth and reality are socially constructed, but now seems to be merely an inconvenient truth newly challenged his religious faith. But he gradually accepted the social constructionist way of understanding reality. In '66, when he was on ABT, all done except for his dissertation, he took a job at Utah State University, here he was, for the only time in his career, surrounded by Mormons at work. Here was a new challenge, dividing the LDS religion from the Mormon individuals with whom he associated, some of high church office and some unfriendly. Even when he worked with Mormons, he had to divide himself from Mormonism. Even in Zion, he remained a California Mormon. He soon moved to Washington State University, his primary academic home, where he had the more advanced technical support needed to complete the statistical portions of his dissertation. At the beginning of the second chapter of his autobiography, Mauss identifies himself as an apologist for the LDS Church. That might be a surprise to some after the measured skepticism and coolness of his discourse. His relationships with church authority have always been distanced and respectful. He also admits to tense relationships with sociology colleagues because of his candid, sometimes self-promoting, perhaps combative or abrasive style. He has felt tensions in both of his major membership groups. He was and is a very tough grader, both at school and at church, of students and colleagues. No sentimentality here. Still, he has played the academic game and won it, winning grants, doing research, publishing in the required journals, ascending to respected senior status, although he has not always found satisfaction in the timely topics that it was wise for him to explore. He wanted to return to religious studies, especially on Mormons. Instead of working together, his two lives had worked in opposition to each other. He worked this divided life towards synthesis, which he eventually achieved during the 1980s. He had paid off his apprenticeship to academia and earned the right to do what he wanted. He phased out the professional activities related to deviant behavior, social problems, and alcohol studies, and jumped into Mormon studies with both feet. Mauss's important book, The Angel and the Beehive, resulted from the marriage of his years of experience in an observation of Mormonism and his sociological skills. This was Mauss's first book, published in 1994, when he was 66 years old, rather late in his career. He'd been working with the ideas and the methods for a long time, but rather than wearing out, he had been sharpening his tools all the time. He saw strange changes in the Mormon Church in top-down requirements that juiced up the priesthood at the expense of the auxiliaries, that emphasized obedience to authority and discouraged independent groups. Gradually, as the strictures of correlation became apparent, he continued to observe, searching for a sociological model that would explain what was happening. How could the Mormon Church, he wondered, be headed towards secularization and assimilation into the general urban culture, while at the same time resisting that assimilation and striving to maintain its distinctive and peculiar traits? He saw that a new generation of conservative leaders was trying to move the church back toward its original beliefs, which he called retrenchment. He was finally able to come up with a theoretical explanation for this anomaly. He was able to see the contradictory counterforces operating on the Mormon Church in sociological terms. That's the conundrum that he was able to explicate so brilliantly. That was the explanation that galvanized readers like me. Armand's tenacity and his ability to build and plant where he is located has allowed him to make indelible marks on Mormon thought and on independent Mormon organizations. I've been in a position to see his potent effect on two of these organizations, Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought, and the Claremont Graduate University's Mormon Studies program. I think he is personally responsible for the financial and editorial strength of Dialogue today. He almost single-handedly imposed professional standards and fiscal responsibility on several boards and editors, promising a future to a little journal that could very well have cashed out by now. In an emotional meeting with the dying Eugene England, he promised to save Dialogue, and with help from others, such as Molly Benyon, he has done it. He's been the most faithful person in the creation of the Mormon Studies program at Claremont. He has served as professor, advisor, donor, fundraiser, negotiator, financial watchdog, active Mormon Studies Council member. He has served with many other potent leaders who have moved on to other church establishments, and I think that he is the only one of the original group left standing. I could be wrong about that. But thanks again to his tenacity and generosity, many young and older students have had the opportunity to study Mormonism at a traditional school of religion. Many community members have had the chance to experience academic treatments of Mormonism in a context other than the church itself. So he's been a person of considerable gifts, with long labor and discipline, has honed those gifts to make serious contributions. His frankness and intensity are not always politic, but they give him a formidable authenticity and undeniable authority. The 3 major books he has written in what would have been his retirement years have all added to the Mormon Studies canon, significantly influencing a generation of students and the future of the discipline. His activities and dedication to organizations which have benefited from his interest in labor will change the conversation for generations to come. He and Ruth have peopled the landscape with their multitudinous progeny. They will leave gifts to the future in many forms. And to think that this successful life all results from his being a California Mormon. Armand, we love you, we admire you, we honor you.
It's been in the trenches, so.
Pleasure to see so many great minds gathered together for the last couple of days. My name is Steve Bradford. I'm the chair of the Mormon Studies Council here at Claremont. Our job is to keep the money flowing so that these great events can continue to happen, and that we can continue to have a place where independent thought can flourish, and where we can build something that will allow us to appreciate even more this heritage that we have as Mormons, and as those that are embracing and loving Mormons. We wouldn't be where we are today, as Claudia mentioned, without Armand Mauss. He continues to be an active member of the Mormon Studies Council. When Molly Benyon was talking about receiving uninvited emails, I get them constantly. And they are, as she said, always helpful, always well thought, and occasionally I swear under my breath, and then we implement most of what he has to say. So his intellectual prowess and his interest and his tenacity continue today, even at the young age of, I believe, we're coming on around 85 years old, and we hope it continues for a long time. But one of the things that Armand has done is he doesn't just write and speak, but he actually donates. I don't really know what his portfolio looks like, but he's donating at least $5,000 a year to us. And I'm sorry to share that, Armand, but I just want people to know that this is somebody that just really lives an integral life in every respect. We have been blessed to have been able to create a $3 million endowment to support somebody that we hope will be here for decades to come, Patrick Mason. This will allow us to have his services, and we're hoping they fill that chair at University of Virginia really quickly, and they don't think about us out here in the West when they're trying to fill that I suggest maybe Terrell Givens or someone like that could fill that chair. And so now what our focus is, now that we've safely got one of the greatest, not only academic futures ahead of him, Patrick Mason, but he's just an awesome individual. I love just sitting in a room and talking to him, and I make all these statements, and he'll contradict me, and I'm always wrong. His mind is just amazing, and so now we want to circle around him more of the students. We've got a great group of students that have come through the program, that many of whom are already out and teaching, but we want to focus on having an endowment for students. And we got a great start this past year when Roy and Carol Christensen were kind enough to create the Robert L. Millett Fellowship for those students that are looking at a career in church education, either at BYU or Institutes of Religion or other locations. Tonalyn Rutherford, who's here today, is the first recipient of the Robert L. Millett Fellowship. And we're going to expect great things of her. I don't know how you get any greater than what she's already accomplished as a seminary teacher, a full-time missionary, a Relief Society president, but apparently there are some more things out there for her. And so what Armand is now prodding me to do, and what our council has agreed to do, is to raise an endowment that's unrestricted for students, both Mormons and non-Mormons, that want to come to Claremont and maybe don't have the access financially to the costs of an education here. And so our plan is to raise another $3 million that will be available for our students so that they can come in ever greater numbers. And we would encourage those of you that are here to think about that. And if you're poor, think of all your less poor friends that you can share this. Tell them about your experience here and the ambiance and the feelings that you've had here, and the fact that we're creating something that can be great. And we feel like the next step in that process is to have the opportunity to have the students that really want to come here actually be here. And with a $3 million endowment, we think that we can do that. It's going to require some sacrifice. Some of us that aren't super wealthy, we're thinking about contributing about $10,000 a year for 5 years, so that we can get to, if we have enough of us, I believe if there are 20 of us that do that, we'll be able to raise $1 million. I'm a lawyer, so my math isn't always that great, but we feel that's a good start, and maybe there's some that are even better off that can help us get there faster, and maybe some that aren't as well off that can be part of a strong group that can help us get to that next level. And we want to do it before Armand turns 100. In fact, we'd like to do it within the next 5 years. So that's our goal. We want Armand to be here when it happens. And so please think about that, and think about ways in which you can share this gospel of Claremont with others, and together we can make this even better than, if that's possible, than what it is right now. The feeling that we have right now, I don't think I want to ever forget, but I think we can make it even better. So thank you again for coming and listening to this spiel. We figured after you had dessert that you'd be paying attention a little bit and in a good mood to listen to this. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you again, everyone who's participated here. Thanks to President Freund for opening our home to us, to all of my colleagues and the staff here at CGU who have made this possible, the wait staff and everybody else. It's been a terrific event. And thank you all to all of you and to the presenters. This has been a terrific conference. They're not all this good. This one was really good. And thank you to Armand, and this has been terrific. Thank you all for your association, for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day.